mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a what? Yeah. You know I be on a what? Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a what? Yeah. It's all hard, ain't no fear here.
What's up? Welcome to another exciting episode of Ride the Rebellion podcast. I got to tell you, I'm really stoked for this episode just because I've seen his work before. I'm not saying it because he's sitting in a chair over here. We have a guy named John Jackson with us. We'll show his face in a second. We're going to hide it as long as possible.
Works for me.
Kids,
I'm a lot prettier behind the
late.
camera
You're
than
there
in
now.
front
You made it.
Jeez. At least I have this microphone here.
But again, we're excited to have him here. He is a professional photographer, avid mountain biker, and just all around badass, good guy, fun. I've only met him for a little while. We were supposed to ride today. It rained, so now you guys get a bonus episode. If we were doing Patreon, we could have charged for this shit.
Damn, we've been teeing up Patreon
and we could have then gotten him, give him a little rev share, and been like, "Hey, we're going to produce tutorials," and bloop, you get a little extra money.
I thought you were going to say because on Patreon I have to pay to be on it.
That'd be even better.
Luckily, this week you get to dodge it. That said, we're going to jump right into the sponsors.
Yep.
Because that's what we do on the show. We get them out of the way because we just don't care about them.
We're going to do Sherry's Berries?
Sherry's not a sponsor.
No, going straight into it. Just a shout out to our friends. There's upcoming events all over the place. If you haven't had a chance, head over to dirtcoasteracademy.com and check out Dirt Coaster Academy where you can micro machines your way. I'm just kidding.
Dude, did you used to work on Prices Right, like at the end where they just roll it?
That's pretty good. I wanted to be the micro machine guy. Do you remember him?
Yes.
Hey, it's micro machines, and the guy would go really fast. I kind of wanted to go into auctioneering. Anyway, if you have a chance, head over to dirtcoasteracademy.com. Check them out. Also, if you're feeling lucky,
you can join Lucky Shot Coffee and get a cup of coffee. I always fuck that up. I'm a fucking
We're gonna play.
I was impressed.
We're gonna play a
He
game.
fucked it up. I was like, you did pretty good.
Those two we're done with. Our next game is we just give the title of the client, and then you have to assume what the sponsor
Oh,
does.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that is it.
Nice.
That's what we did.
Yeah. All right. How did we do it last time that was so horrific with...
We did it with Andy.
but how do we do it with Kevin?
Oh, we just said Man of War.
Oh, there you go. What do you think Man o' War is?
It's a fish, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's a company. I don't think the fish of Man o' War. We're sponsored by
Was
Man
I
o'
supposed to
War.
be paying attention? I'm sorry.
No. All you got to say is, what do you think Man o' War is?
Yeah,
What do you
it's
think?
I was
sponsor.
skipping the commercials.
It's one of our
Man
sponsor.
of War. So is it bike related at least?
Nope.
Okay.
Maybe.
I was like, that's a rough one for a
He
bike.
rides bikes.
Yeah, he rides bikes.
He's an enduro guy.
Is it alcohol related?
That's pretty good. That's a good close. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are alcohol induced when they go visit Kevin Black's Man o' War tattoo.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
This is like
He's a awesome artist. Like,
He's
he can-
fantastic.
he
Good
does
rider.
Really
great,
good work.
great
Yeah.
downhill guy. Came from the ad industry, so it's one of those vibes where like, and they just left it and decided to do something more fun.
Yep.
I don't know if that's your background. We'll get to that in a minute. Our other sponsor.
Oh yeah, we're running and we're trying at Run and Try with Aaron Friesmeyer.
Hey, I've been there.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw
Yeah,
you there
yeah.
when you were here last time.
Yeah. I think
Heck
I
yeah.
bought socks there.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. So that one we don't have to play a game on. Run and Try for
Yeah,
all
I messed
your.
it up. The game was messed
running-
up. It's so hard to do him.
I know, but I think
Well,
about
it's
it.
not hard to do you, Aaron, but it's hard to do his store.
And we've been canceled in the first 7 minutes.
I haven't even got to talk yet.
And that's the episode. Just kidding. Just rolling it out. All right, but let's jump into the conversation because I think it's kind of interesting. There's a lot to unpack, or as much as you want to talk about. You can literally just be like, I'm done at any moment. Fair?
Well, we're going to talk for 4 days then. Oh, wait. We got tacos coming after this.
We do
so
have tacos.
What time's the taco place
and
open?
battery.
Live.
11.
In like another hour?
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
good.
So
Yeah,
this
we're
will be an
good.
hour
I
long
may have
because
to
we're
plug
going
you
to
in. I may have to pause and plug you in at some point.
It's all fine.
So let's start with this. So your background, let's talk about the fact that your background now, and we don't have to go into history yet. We'll probably circle back to it, but you literally describe your job on a daily basis because I think that sets up a whole lot of other components related to mountain biking, photography, the whole game. So,
And how we met. Actually.
yeah, actually. Yeah.
So I have a company called Not Stock Photography, Inc. I'm Not Stock Photo on all the social medias, but I take pictures of custom cars for a living, basically cars that are not stock. And I just travel all over the country in a custom painted Sprinter van. And then, like last year, I drove 73,000 miles and photographed 250 cars. So that's what I do. And I'm basically a hired gun, and I travel around and take pictures of cars for a living. But I also do it for like companies and stuff too, but mainly magazines.
It's the equivalent of a dream job for like me. Like that would be my dream. Can I just go around and shoot footage? I would just shoot low slider, awesome shots of cars and people getting out of them in slow motion all day long.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So how did you guys link up? Because this is where the connection comes in.
So I think it was from the wagon thing, right?
Yeah, from your wagon.
So like
we kind of became friends on Instagram.
Yeah,
That's how it
I was
happened,
building wagons way back in the day, living in Ohio, building custom lowrider kids wagons. He followed me on social media, and then he was coming through Mobile and was like, "Hey, wait, you live in Mobile, right?" So like 3 years ago, I guess,
Yep, about
before
3
the
years
C
ago.
word, he came through, and we
it's so
rode-
funny. The C word means two different things.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, but this other C word that will get us the green bar.
Oh, yeah. Correct.
You know what C word I'm talking about?
I have no idea.
It's not
No.
see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
not
only
the
C
see you
word.
next Tuesday
Yeah.
one.
No, the C word
other
that
one.
gives you the green bar on your Spotify.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've already forgot about that.
Yeah, well, most people have.
Kind of sounds like moped.
Yeah.
Yeah. It rhymes with smishmortion.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's how we met, and then because of the hot rod world, like he was going to shows that I was at, we never actually linked up until we rode mountain bikes
Yep.
together.
Yep. He was
which
nice enough
pretty
to
crazy.
show me some local cross country trails, and I get lucky too because I travel in my Sprinter. I always have my mountain bike with me, and I just ride trail all over the country. That's the added benefit of living in a Sprinter van and traveling all over the country.
Right.
And usually every year I'm in every state except for Alaska and Hawaii at least once. So I usually every year I ride some trail in almost every state. And then I go into Canada and ride all the provinces of Canada and stuff too. So it's
Good grief.
yeah. So it's and I still suck at mountain bikes.
That's not. But my thing is, you've had on the riding side, you've had a breadth of experience to get to taste all these different flavors of trails, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So is there any at any point in your mind, do you have like a running list, or do you have like? So I do it with cheeseburgers. I have like cheeseburgers around. I have the number one because I toured with a band, and so I was like, I'm going to pick one food, and then I travel a lot for work. But do you have like a top three that you're like these trails?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we actually bought a house in Burnett, Texas, which is northwest of Austin, about an hour. That's where my wife lives. But Reveille Peak Ranch and Spider Mountain is in between our houses, so you can ride from our front doorstep to the bottom of the chairlift, ride to the top, and then ride back home. But then Reveille Peak Ranch has all the trail you'd ever want. There's rock slabs, there's dual slalom, there's flow lines. The guys I ride with, Team Trail Party, have done so much hard work in there. So Reveille Peak Ranch is probably the best place that I ride because, you know, it has everything. Rock slabs, jumps, drops. I was showing you guys there's a 28-foot drop. There's a jump line where you can jump on the top of a water truck and then off the other side. And it's just like, but Jeremiah and Abel and the guys at Team Trail Party just built some crazy stuff. But then there's also epic trail cross country where you ride through cow pastures and there's cows in the trail, and you ride up a mountain. There's rock drops and rock slabs, and it's like a little bit of everything. So and then anywhere in Colorado, you go up to Fernie in British Columbia, you know, there's all that great stuff. But, you know, we started out chasing all the IMBA epics. You know, it's like, oh, there's IMBA epic in like every state. So we did all that. Like even Santos, like my wife's originally from Jacksonville. We go ride Santos. And Alafaya, which is in Tampa, is amazing. And I mean, there's just every state has a great trail. Like I rode a little bit of what you guys have going on behind the scenes today. And like we made one lap and it started lightning, and then we're like, oh, let's go get tacos and do a podcast. It's like, but I had a great time just doing that one lap. So it was like, I mean, I find great trail everywhere. But Reveille Peak Ranch is home, and that's in Burnett, Texas. But that's my place.
I always feel like home trails. It's always because you know them and you're familiar with them, and it's not that you throw caution to the wind on them, but you don't have to think about it. At least for me, when I go ride the Reb, there's only like one or two spots where I'm like, okay, actively be conscious if it's a new line or there's a drop we have, and those two things I'm conscious about what I'm doing. The rest of the time I'm still conscious, but I don't have to be like stressed out 100%.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it is with Texas trails, because Texas trails are dry and loose a lot of times.
Yeah.
So no matter wherever I go ride, if you're used to being dry and loose, like you can pretty much ride anywhere, because, you know, like if you can ride in Texas, you can pretty much ride anywhere, because it's like it prepares you for everything.
That's what we say about the sand here.
Yeah. Well, the sand same
Yeah,
way. Like
yeah.
if you, like that's like when you guys were like, "Hey, be careful, it's sandy." I was like, "Well, I live on loose trails, so I actually like loose trail better than sticky trail, because then I usually wind up just digging in a tire and eating it."
Right.
You know?
So now, since you were in, so like you traversed two different industries, right? Like mountain biking is prevalent everywhere now, more than it was before. But so when you go to places, you show up, you're shooting a car, obviously usually badass. Are a lot of these people mountain bikers?
Yeah, well, so
Do you come across more?
you run into a lot of people, believe it or not, that are in the automotive industry that are ex-BMX racers. So like Tim Strange from Strange Motion has a BMX team and builds cars, and they're really good. And then Brad Fanshaw, who owns Bond Speed Wheels, like he's in the BMX Hall of Fame for Nebraska. And if you watch Nebraska BMX from like the 80s, it's like it looks like mountain biking on BMX bikes because it's all like it's gnarly. And so like Brad will post his BMX stuff and you're like, I never knew this about this guy. But so that's why one of the things I've been trying to do is try to get a lot of those guys have gotten out of shape, but they all love bikes. And that's kind of why I like the SE style of bikes, like the big 29ers.
Yep.
And like people just want to get in and start riding with their kids. And that's the best gateway to get people into shape is they have kids and they want to ride bikes with them. But like those SE big BMX bikes have been great for out of shape old car guys because they're cool.
They're nostalgic anyway,
and they're nostalgic,
right?
and then it's the gateway drug into having 170 mil travel enduro bike because you're like, you know.
Plus, those car guys can't ride anything that's stock, right? That's got to be customized or custom colors, and those SE bikes are all
well. That was
wild.
Like because you had seen my previous bike. I had a bike that had a 65-hour paint job on it that specialized.
Yeah,
me
but
up
can you
with
tell
for the
that
SEMA
story?
show.
Can you tell the story about it? Because I think, and if you'll send me a picture, I'll plug it into the video.
I'll send you a picture. Yeah. So my last bike, I had this bad problem is I think when I got into mountain biking, of course I started like everybody else on a hardtail. And then you're like, and you're cross country racing in Texas. And then you get that person. Well, let me go back a little bit further. So I originally rode road bikes in Houston with my wife. That's what got me back into riding bikes. And I lost 65 pounds. And it was the best thing I ever did. And it got me into great shape. Well, then we had a buddy that we ride with. He was a mountain biker. Well, we did a Grand Fondo, and he shows up on a single speed 9er carbon bike and basically pulls us the whole day on a mountain bike.
Unreal.
And then he's jumping curbs and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's way cooler than what I'm doing. So I was like, immediately the next day I went to go find a mountain bike. And so the first day I rode it was in Houston. And I have no idea I put 100 pounds of air in mountain bike tires. And I'm on this it's a BMC hardtail that I bought. And I start going down this path and there's wooden trail. Well, the wooden trails there in Houston get slimy from it. And so I hear my dog running behind me. So I turn to look and I eat it. So that's still to the day, knock on wood, the worst crash I've had. Like I had a big bruise. So I had a job where I went to Atlanta like the next week and I found a mountain bike race. And my buddy's like, that's the best thing you do. Enter a race, start in the back and just follow people and watch how they ride. And so when I show up there, it's like, there'll be like a rock garden. I'm like, well, can I ride across this? And you see people riding, you're like, oh, I can. And then I rode it the day before and he's like, well, how much air pressure you got? I was like, 100. And he's like, you got tubes in? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, just put it down to like 40 or 50 and start from there. But I went over the bars 5 times my first race, and it wound up being a 6-hour race. Like, so it was an endurance race. But luckily I was in road bike shape.
Right.
And then, but like ever since then, like I have never been felt like I sucked more in my life than that day. But then it also drove me to be better at it. And I'm like, compared to the guys from Trail Party that I ride with, like ex-BMX racers who build trail and guys jump gaps and hit big drops. And it's like, I always joke that I'm just like the token guy because I have a little bit of like, people know who I am. So they're like, oh yeah, he's local. We'll let him be part of us. But like just riding with those guys make me better. And like, just to look like even though like you'll ride something, you're like, oh, I suck so bad. But you think about that back then, you're like, yeah, but I wouldn't ride across a stick this big back in the day.
Right.
But that's what got me into that. So now let's get I'm going to ramble here, but let's go back to that bike. So I have a buddy. I was working in the paint industry for PPG, the paint company, and they did a theme for the SEMA booth that was camping. And they're like, oh, you should paint your mountain bike. So I had the first edition Olin's coil.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
SEMA is Sea Otter for hot rods.
Yeah, SEMA. Well, that'll also lead in the story too. So SEMA is Sea Otter for hot rods and custom cars. So I had the purple edition Olin's. The first Olin's bike was Specialized. Wow. And I got into it because it's coil fork, coil shock. And if you grow up looking at dirt bikes, Olin's was the stuff. You're like, oh, yeah, Olin's. And so I had that bike. So we were going to paint it. Well, my buddy's a painter for Specialized, and that's when the 2019 frame first came out on the stump jumper. And he goes, well, you can't take the old frame. You got to take the new frame. And I'm like, well, I'm not buying a $3,000 frame. And they had just come out, and there's not any in the world. So my friend Ron Jones, he still custom paints. He's out of Connecticut. He goes, well, let me see what I can do for you. And the day we went to take my purple bike apart, he goes, frame's on its way. So he sent me a frame.
Holy smokes.
And so I was going to use the Olin stuff on that. And he's like, I don't think that Olin stuff's going to work on that. So he called Olin's. And like Olin's is in North Carolina for U.S. Well, he deals with like Sweden or Norway, where they're from. I know I should know where they're from, but they sent a fork and a shock for that bike. And then so we decided to paint it like an 80s, like Troy Lee style bike, you know, with Ripperway graphics on it. So my buddy, Lucky Strike Designs, Jeremy Senior, has 60 hours, and like all the logos on it are all done by hand, and it's this tearaway paint job and all that stuff. And the green that's on it, PPG developed that color but decided not to use it because of the price of the pearl.
Right.
Because it flips, because it had like a little bit of green in it. So all of that paint's either on that bike or it's on 2 spray outs. And I think Jeremy actually did that because he knew I would wreck that bike and he didn't want to have to repaint it.
Brilliant.
And then,
Brilliant.
so flash forward, I had that bike. I put 10,000 miles on that bike. I loved that bike. It was like, and I went through this whole thing where I had 6 bikes in 2 years because I was like, hardtail, this hardtail. I got the Epic because I wanted to race cross country. And then, you know, you realize that all the suspension has to go back to Specialized to get tuned because of all the way it's done. So then I get a stump jumper and it's aluminum. Like, well, now I need a carbon stump jumper.
Right.
So I just keep going through that. So I get this bike. I love it. We actually took it to Sea Otter with Olin's. And it went really big. Like, it wound up on a couple YouTube channels because of how good it was. And it had Hope brakes, Onyx hubs, Roval carbon, all the Wolf 2 stuff. I mean, best of everything on it. And it got a lot of attention at Sea Otter. And then I just started riding the crap out of it. And then I wound up pulling the bolt out of the linkage. And then the only way to fix that is to cut that bolt out because it's molded in the carbon. And so I call Ron and he's like, well, normally that is covered under frame warranty, but they don't warranty free frames. So like at the time, then I had sticker shock because, you know, like almost everything on that bike was given to me because I built it for trade shows.
Right.
And I think the last bike I paid $3,000. I was like, ugh, $3,000. So then I start pricing the equivalent and I can't get a frame. So like, good friends with the guys at Squatch and some of their IBIS stuff and everything. I'm like, well, it's going to be $7,000 just to get a bike with mid-level stuff. And then I lucked into, my wife rides a Yeti 4.5 and she loves her bike and she's named it George because the first time she rode her camber through the woods in Houston, she hit a tree, so she named it George the Jungle. Yeah, watch out for that tree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like all of her bikes from now on has been George. So this is George 2.0. And so we found this place south of Des Moines called Boone Cycles. And he was a Yeti dealer, but he's like a little boutique shop. And so I was like, well, let's go see what he has in Yetis. Well, I'd looked into the Revels to buy my wife a new bike. And he had the purple Revel Rascal in stock as a frame. And I fell in love with it. And so I wound up transferring as much as I could from Dirt Rentals to this bike. And this bike rides way better than that stump jumper. Because I was super sad because me and that bike went everywhere.
Right.
And went off of everything. Bentonville, Canada. It's been everywhere, you know. And so it was pretty sad. But the new bike, we named it Sonny Hooper, which Hooper's another Burt Reynolds movie. Yeah. But he's a stunt man who's always talking his buddies into doing stupid stuff. So like this bike's super capable and it talks me into doing stupid stuff. So that's why I named it Sonny Hooper. And but so that's why I'm riding Revel on that same Olin's fork cut down to 150, over forked at 150 with 140 rear coil on it too. But a lot of the stuff came over from Dirt Reynolds onto Sonny Hooper. Does
a lot of like because the language, like you get into overforked, it's the same language I hear when I've been to car shows and when you all know all the nuances. Do you find that language of nuance? Because we do the same with cameras.
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
and I can sit here.
Oh, yeah. We were nerding out, and he's over here going,
right. But does that? I mean, does your brain ever? Do you ever find yourself mixing all these together into one? Yeah.
Well, then you wind up with the slang. Like you'll use slang from camera stuff into bikes or into cars, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, Don't worry, I don't know what I'm talking about either. I'm just making this up as I go along.
So where's Dirt Reynolds now?
So Dirt Reynolds is actually, so Olin's was nice enough to build me a new coil for the back because they said that can't hang on the wall above your fireplace at the wife's house without a coil on it. So like they tuned a coil for the Revel for it. And because I actually rode, so they were sending a coil for the rear and I rode the factory shock that came with that bike. And we went to me and the wife went to Montana. We were riding. We were on our way to Washington State. So we were riding through Bozeman and everything like that. Just epic trails in Bozeman. So like, I'm like, this bike is so good. I was like, I hope I don't mess it up putting this coil on it because it rides so good. Because I hadn't ridden air in 5 years. I've been ridden all coil. And then as soon as I put that coil on it, it's like, that bike's, everybody let ride, it's awesome. It just has the worst name because it's the Rascal. And that's also the little scooters old people ride around on. And I was like, But they have a rail.
Maybe it's a sign.
Yeah, well, I am 51 now, so it's like it's one of those ones where, and I have started playing pickleball, so like I'm getting all the old man stuff. I have a Rascal, and I play pickleball, and I live in an RV or a Sprinter van, so it's like
Yeah, I think
checked all the boxes.
I didn't get to ride it. I got to pick it up, and for those that they're drooling like the rest of us, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even with the fork, it's lighter. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so I can only
I was
imagine.
going to let you ride it, and then of course as soon as we dip in the woods, it starts lighting.
Well, we planned that to get you on the pod.
Oh yeah,
No,
I thought you planned
the podcast wasn't planned.
Well, that was the
because
funny
we were
part.
just
All the
gonna
way
ride.
down the downhill, I was like, we could just go eat tacos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, literally we were just going to hang out. And
Yeah.
like, cause I never asked anybody to do stuff. Then I was like, well, dude, he's here. Like, if we can at least have a conversation, we're going to sit and talk anyway.
Oh, yeah.
If he doesn't care if there's a couple cameras and some audio, then we're going to have the same dialogue. We
Yeah.
might as well talk about the same dialogue. So with me, I'm going to ask some tech side. So you shoot Fuji.
I shoot the Fuji medium format GFX 100.
Yep.
And they have tried to get me switched to the smaller one, but I just like the big body. And then I actually have an XH2 for video. And I just got the new X100V.
Yeah,
the
it's
little
bad.
small. Oh,
It's
it's
bad,
so awesome. Yeah, I had it for the pocket dump. I just did the oil and whiskey podcast with the Roaster Shop. And so I was like, I want to have a camera in my pocket. And so like they let me borrow one for that. So it's been pretty nice. So it's like, I don't know if I'm going to send it back.
Do you, so when you're like looking at photos, when you go through that stuff, obviously you have, I'm not saying you ever imitate, because I understand this side. Like I don't have anybody, I'm fans of other people's work.
Yep.
Is there anybody else that because your stuff's really uniquely yours.
So-
is there other people that you have you looked at and been like, fuck, this is really good shit?
So a lot of stuff that got me into it. So the main lighting style for me is, I don't know if you've heard of the name O. Winston Link.
Yeah.
So he's a train photographer that used to like traipse with like miles of cable and batteries and these big massive lights and up into the mountains to shoot trains for like Burlington Northern and all this other stuff. And the stuff's epic, especially when you realize it's like the 40s and 50s.
Right.
You know, and it's like, I couldn't even imagine. Like I have a really big think tank bag that has all my lights. I have 3 ProPhoto B10 Pluses and my GFX, and it all fits into one big roller bag.
Right.
And it's like, I couldn't imagine carrying that through the mountains. And like that one light he has probably weighed as much as that bag.
Yeah.
And then it was just him and one assistant, you know, and he has a museum in Norfolk. And I went and visited that, and they got a picture of him and all the stuff and his buddy, and they took it up.
smokes.
And it's like one of the most epic pictures you've ever seen. It's like, but that's what got me into like lighting, you know, like cars and stuff like that. And then you start looking through iconic automotive photography, like Randy Lorenzen used to do a lot of stuff for Hot Rod, and it was all studio stuff, and it's all done in layers. And I brought up before on another podcast, but he shot Cadzilla with ZZ Top, and there was a poster made. And he told the story about it on another podcast. And so the car shot ZZ Top's there. But if you look at the backdrop, back then when you did the studio stuff, they'd buy the backdrop. They'd go to like the studio place and get a backdrop.
Yeah.
Well, the backdrop from that poster is actually the inner ear of when they did Spaceballs, where they flew in.
You are
So the
kidding me.
backdrop, yeah. So he told that story. So like they like, oh, we just got this in, and it was the backdrop from that when they flew into like the vacuum girl.
Holy,
so that's the
that's
backdrop
awesome.
from that poster. Is that because it looks like an industrial thing, but
Yeah.
it's like the inside of the inner ear from
Brilliant.
Spaceballs.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so and it's like, and there's another guy, Wesley Allison, that's shot forever for Hot Rod too. And he like, I spent my life trying to, you know, deconstruct everything. So like, basically when you light stuff, you look at it like when you light a car with natural light, like lit the sun, sunset, all this other stuff, is you just have to think of it the same. Like all the angles are the same. If you light it where the sun lights, it's all the same.
Right.
So you try to light it as natural as possible with external lighting, like using strobes and stuff like that. And the hardest part is not to overlight. It's just to give it that little kiss to get like shadows out of the wheel and stuff like
But that's your work there that stands out to me, is like that
Yeah.
vibe of stuff. It doesn't, it feels purposeful, but it doesn't look purposeful. I don't know how to describe it. To me, in creative direction terms, it looks like someone took the time to give me a proper shot,
Yeah.
but it doesn't ever feel like it's been overtouched.
Well, I've screwed up a lot in 20 years to have that look that looks like I know what I'm doing when I really don't. But yeah, it's just
That's
He's
what we were
modest. He's
talking
being super modest.
We
Yeah.
were talking about that earlier this morning, how he's like, sometimes he'll be with a client or like a car,
Oh.
and they're like, he's just talking
I'll be
to
taking a
him.
picture with one hand,
Yeah.
and my wife's like, "You should make that look a little harder." And then I was like, "Well, they just don't see the 20 years before when I've
Yeah.
I've lit in a million engine bays." So like last year was 250 cars, you know, and that's a full photo shoot. That's not just click next click. It's
Yeah.
like it's not that, you know.
Yeah, we're
So
not
it's-
talking about snaps. These aren't.
Yeah, it's
these
not
aren't-
snaps.
no.
It's it's legit. Yeah, I actually broke the shutter on the GFX 100 last year.
From cycles?
From because they say it's between $500,000 to $1 million. So somewhere between, it has $500,000 to $1 million on. I broke it, and then luckily being part of ProCert, I just bought the XH2S, which is 40 megapixel, and it was in my bag like 2 days before I just got it.
Jesus.
And then so I wound up shooting 3 cars pre-SEMA with the XH2S, and no XH2 because it's the 40 megapixel. And luckily, it bailed me out because I had that because I had like an XT4 or something like that before that. No, I had a GFX 50, my old one, that was in the bag. And I traded in at Roberts Camera in Indianapolis. Sorry, cameras everywhere. And then and now I've taken the XH2 and actually traded it for the S because the video's better and it's
the
faster.
video's way good.
So, but yeah, so like I broke the shutter in that 100. And so I sent it to him. I was like, well, now's a good time to get the S. And I'm like, well, how much is the body? And then it's this much. And like, well, how much does it fix the shutter? $450. I'm like, we're fixing the shutter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, this could be a question for both of y'all because you both have come from video and stills. So like, has the growth or whatever you want to call it of social media changed the way you do things? Like, does it change? Because video is popular now. I mean, Instagram is all video.
Yeah.
Or like,
it sucks. Instagram not being stills anymore. Is it?
Right.
It sucks for photographers. I mean, it's great for videographers.
Right, but has it changed? Does it make you want to do like more short reel stuff, or like I mean, I know you do a ton of like behind the scenes, or like, hey, check this out. This is what the shoot looks like. I'm not going to show you the finished product until it's done, but this is what behind the scenes looks like.
Yeah, it's tough because like my market's stills, but the thing that's actually helped me is because I do need to transition to video more than what I have. And it kind of forces you to. The only thing I don't like is vertical. It's like, because it's like my work is just these big, huge, like it's almost like landscape photography, what I do. Like I set a scene, and it's like, it's hard to set a scene in vertical. Now, I always have vertical shots of everything because when a magazine does a cover, they use the vertical because it just fits, the masthead and everything. So I have verticals, but it's like, but I want to show this nice flat, like you don't want to hang up. I mean, you have movie posters on the wall, but that's one thing. But like most time, art doesn't hang well as a vertical.
No, I agree.
Unless it's just really big.
Right.
So it's because there's just a lot of down here and up here that you don't really need to use.
Well, and to be fair, like a lot of the dudes you're dealing with, hot rod dudes, aren't on social media anyway, right?
Well,
like,
believe it or not,
I would say they probably
are.
So here's the crazy thing:
Actually,
is when Instagram went to Reels. I was, you can post a picture and make it a reel and do whatever and put sound underneath it. But all of a sudden, my Facebook bump got huge. And I think it's just a lot of those people that when it started, I don't like these reels, I don't like this TikTok style, they all went back to Facebook.
Oh, gotcha.
And then so a lot of the people that shoot cars and are into cars, like that following on Facebook, like it's over 100,000 on Facebook.
Wow.
And it's like, and all of a sudden it just bumped up one day. And it's like, I don't know if
well,
it's
you
just,
don't know the bump you're about to get from this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to those 4 people.
They'll be dedicated. There's actually a lot of, it's really interesting. You were saying something about this earlier. It's just fascinating to me, the amount of overlap that we find from guys who ride bikes and that love cars.
Yep.
And the tie-in, like Todd Golf, shout out to Big Todd. Like Todd has a Nova, I think it is.
It's not a Nova. It's
not?
a Chevelle.
Oh, it's a Chevelle.
Remember, so he has an awesome, badass Chevelle.
Awesome.
It's an SS Chevelle, and I was drunk one night, and I called him, and I was like, "Hey, this is Steve from the local Nova Club. I just wanted to see if you wanted to join." Well, then he calls me back and goes, "It's not a Nova." So now the joke is it's a Nova.
Yeah, or whatever the hell it is.
Well, it's nice because, I meet a lot of people, like my Sprinter's custom painted, and like everybody thinks it's wrapped, but it's all satin copper, and it's got lowrider graphics on the side of it and everything. It says not stock on it. So like it starts a lot of conversations at trailheads, and it was funny. I had some guys, we were riding in, not Gunnison, we were riding in Salida. We were riding in Salida, and these 2 guys, I keep seeing them staring over at the Sprinter. And we just got there, and then I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they come over. He's like, "Hey, me and my buddy have a bet." And he goes, "We bet with a Sprinter that nice that your bike's probably shit." Like that. He's like, "Because he goes, don't." Well, first he goes, "Don't take this wrong, but it's like one of those ones." And it's a couple young guys in their 20s, and it's like, and I kind of laughed, and I was like, "Well, who bet that I had a good bike?" And he's like, "He did." I was like, "Well, you're buying lunch, I guess." I was like, so I pulled Dirt Reynolds out, and they're like, "This is even nicer than the Sprinter." And I was like, "Well, just don't watch me ride bikes because I'm I'm not a pro, you know. It's like, but everybody sees the Sprinter and sees my bike, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's gonna shred." And then it's like, I get Texas toast over a double, you know. It's like, so.
Well, you just grab your camera and roll out and, and be like, "Hey, I'm just here for the."
Oh yeah, when the pros are out, I'm just like, I'm gonna fly the drone today. And
I understand.
I just lean my bike against a tree, and I was like, "That bike's so badass." I was like, "Isn't it though?" And I was like, "Oh, let me get some shots of you jumping this."
That's our natural defense mechanism.
Yeah,
if you have photography skills, you're like, oh yeah, 30-foot drop. Yeah, you guys go ahead. I will get below you, get some great angles.
Yeah, my bike's got pink hubs and all this other stuff on it, so it screams, "Hey, look at me!" And then the last thing I want someone to do is to look at me while I'm riding.
Funny enough, we talk about that with Dale's bright, shiny bike all the time. About how
Dale's bike's awesome because he was showing me pictures of that when we rode last time. And I was like, that's a little overkill for riding here in Mobile. And then he's like, well, I don't plan on staying in Mobile.
Right.
But that's like, so I get to carry one bike. So like my stump jumper was 170, 160. And this new bike's 150, 140. And I feel like stuff's changed so well that 150, 140 is way better than that 170, 160.
But they're
even downhill though.
They're super efficient. Though.
Oh, it's super efficient.
How's the pedal? Because Stumpies aren't the best pedalers.
No. I didn't hate it, you know, because you just have to like, just don't attack hills on a bike that weighs 30 pounds. You know, it's like,
well, we do.
Yeah, I know. And then you regret it. So.
Of course.
That's why we have hangout spots.
Yeah, I was so proud of you guys for just going slow because I haven't ridden in 7 weeks. And it was just like, I was like, oh, they're just going to drop me on this uphill.
But how's that Revel going up though?
The Revel's amazing.
Yeah.
I'd love to ride their new rail as well because the rail looks awesome. And I've got a buddy in Florida. There's great jump lines in Florida. Florida, like if you want to go jump bikes,
this is the
Florida
same
is
as Nixon.
Yep.
Florida's legit, you know, for jumping. You know, like go like there's a place outside of my buddy that's here, Jay. He got me into riding. There's just like a loop where you make a circle. Like they've built such an amazing jump line. It's like a jump line out. It's Grapefruit Trails.
That's it. And somebody else, Todd Hall was talking about.
Yeah, Grapefruit's amazing, and it's like. And riding with my buddy Jay and all that stuff. He's got a truck here at Battle in Bama this weekend. That's why I'm in town. And but
you didn't come see us?
Well,
come on.
Well, I knew there was mountain biking. I knew there was mountain biking too. So what was a bad thing?
Trail biking. It's
Yeah,
more like
trail biking. Yeah, well, that's what you do in Florida too. And it's like sometimes stuff winds up way more dangerous because you try to make something out of nothing than it is if you have something.
Oh, for
sure.
sure.
So like I always feel sometimes like when I'm riding some of the Florida trails, like this is way sketchier than flying down a mountain in Texas or Colorado.
Yeah.
You know, because like they let it build up. You know, like you have room to let stuff work out.
It's trail width, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's my question for you because this is a little bit of a builder question.
Yeah.
Because you're one of the few people I've ever met. A lot of people will say they travel and they've done stuff. You're literally driving across the United States, seeing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Trail width is amazing to me. We ride really narrow.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many trees. It's a lot of labor to even get the trail cut.
Yeah.
You go out west in some spots and it's as wide as can possibly be.
It's like
Texas
a whole pasture.
Right.
There's no trees.
What is your consensus when you look at stuff? Is like, are certain sections of the country doing, obviously based on topography, but what are you seeing?
Well, they're starting to, I don't want to start this, but it's like the dumbing down of trails.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of that. Like
Jakey
a lot of
poo.
it's just smooth and groomed. And the more of that you ride, the more you miss chunky stuff. You know, it's like
it's coming back.
Yeah. And
Hands
I
up.
like chunky stuff, but I also like safe chunky stuff. You know, like some stuff, like there's some stuff outside of El Paso, Texas. It's like, I ain't riding this.
Right.
It's like, cause it's like, there's no soft place to land anywhere, you know? And it's like, and it's steep and it turns fast. And it's like, it's not built for a long bike. You know, and that's the thing with East Coast trails. A lot of that East Coast trail is built for short bikes, and now everybody's got a long bike, and it's like, well, I can't go around this corner. You know, it's like, but there's great trail everywhere. You
Dude,
know?
just from that, our campaign slogan was born.
Yeah.
Make hand built great again.
Oh God.
Yeah.
You're lining
you
this
guys'
right up.
trails you've done are great. I love it because it's like it's a little loose. Like it almost felt like loam when we were riding on it today, and it's just like because it's that thick sand. And then it mixes in with that stuff from the trees, and it turns brown. It doesn't look like sand.
Yeah, that was
and like we
our
were
trick.
going through, it, and you kick that little bit of tire, and it feels like you're kicking loam, and it's like
It's
so good.
Fair.
So good.
You did the one trail he got to ride. So shout out to David Martin. He got to ride night shift, day shift, and that trail has turned into a nice. I brought my axe. My goal was to cut that stump, and it didn't happen today because of lightning. I'm not going to sit there swinging it right as it gets above the apex of my head. I get struck Thor style.
That's the one when you ride that chairlift in Texas. Is like if they're even calling for lightning that day, you're like, that's not a good day to ride a chairlift. There's like nothing around except for metal poles you're riding on.
Nope, not doing it. Too much for me.
Yeah, that was one of the things we learned when we first started building there is when we first started building, we would go in, immediately cut the loam out so that we had a packed trail. Well, then we learned, shit, you leave the loam and it's awesome to ride on. It's like a carpet that beds in and it protects the trail. So the newer trails are great in that.
Well, I think it does a disservice to riders too. Like when we started riding Houston's super flat, but it's rooty. It's always wet, it seems like. So you get used to like, because when you first start riding, you're like, roots, I don't know if I can ride across that. And then all of a sudden it's rocks. I don't know if I can ride across that.
Right.
And then once you figure it out and you put it all together, you're like, I can ride over anything. Mm-hmm. But like learning to ride on stuff, like you get a crossed route in the middle of a trail and then people are cutting those roots out. And it's like, no, leave that there. I was like, it's better for everybody. It's like you want better riders on your trail because then, you have a year of trail where no one's really had a serious incident or something like that because, they're not just like used to riding on a paved path because that's like a lot of trails wind up being like, I love Bentonville, but Bentonville has a lot of stuff that's listed as blue that's just like, it's like highway, and I know they put a lot of people into that and I love riding Bentonville, so I'm not sliding it in the least little bit.
No, I get it.
But like sometimes that stuff, like everything's a jump line now. And it's like, I like even when I rode the big bike, like some places you go here, like there's really no up, no down, but you're still riding a 170 mil travel bike. I still enjoy that.
Yeah.
I like riding through the woods, and I was like, there's like my wife likes riding in the desert. Like we go to Scottsdale every year, and in between two car shows, we ride McDowell Mountain, South Mountain, all that stuff.
I'm going in 2 weeks.
Oh, sweet.
And I've been trying to figure. I was going to get guided because I'm out there by myself.
Well,
do I need guided or
no?
no?
Rob Drew is out that way, which is Rich Drew's brother.
Yeah.
And if you can catch that dude out riding, in fact, maybe we can make that connection, and maybe Rob will take you for a spin out there because they have the waterfall on South Mountain and stuff. But that's another. And I have another buddy Tommy that lives out there too, and he shows me some of the stuff he's done. Between Rob Drew and my buddy Tommy, who's a photographer out there, I'll get you with somebody that'll show you some local trails.
Ding.
Yeah.
Ask them if they don't mind being on the podcast.
I'm sure Tommy wouldn't mind. Tommy, in fact, you should do it at Tommy's house because Tommy has a legit great dirt jumper BMX collection. You could do it right in his garage.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I the thing about that's fascinating to me is like what we've seen, and we see it a lot here. Alabama opened its first official bike park in Ride Beeham. Neither one of us have been. I don't know if you've...
No, I haven't either. I stayed at Oak Mountain for 2 days, but my wife had a surgery where she couldn't ride for 6 weeks. So I cheated on her today with riding with you guys, but I told her, I was like, I'm not going to ride my mountain. And her mountain bike's in my Sprinter. So yes, she has her Yeti 4.5s in there. So I said, I won't ride my mountain bike until you're back 100% and can ride. So when I leave the show on Sunday, I'm going to Florida, picking her up, and then we're going to ride Blankets Creek, north of Atlanta. We're going up to Woodstock, and then we might go up to Ellijay and all the other stuff, and then we might sneak over to Anniston and ride, and it just depends on what she feels like doing.
So he's doing what you're trying to do with film, like taking jobs in places where we can mountain bike.
Well, that's how you do it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
because when someone goes, have you ever been here to shoot? I pull up Trail Forks.
That's what I do.
And I'm like, I got so mad. It's like Trail Forks was free for so long. And then now if you travel like me, you have to pay for it because it's like, oh, pick your home thing. I'm like, well, I ain't got no home. I was like, can I just circle the U.S.
Home is
and
where
Canada?
you make it.
Home is where you park it.
and I'm not zinging it, but MTB project is not always up to date. And so I've gotten lost a few times from it. I love it and it's free, but it's not service. Trail Forks has showed me more trails. Well, I missed some lines that
I'll show you. Here's how I look at that though, and I'm sure I'll get some hate on this, but MTB project did really a lot of work to get all the trails mapped out through IMBA and everything. And of course, you feel how you want to feel about IMBA and all that stuff. I don't care, because anybody that helps trail is good to me. I don't care. But
good, because the next guest on the show is related to IMBA, so just teed it up.
So Trail Forks was always, if you went out west, you use Trail Forks. If you're on the East Coast, you use Mountain Bike Project. But then once they started doing the whole thing, everybody started getting on the Trail Forks bandwagon. It's like, and then so IMBA. Like the Mountain Bike Project, the trail builders and the bosses weren't uploading the trails to Mountain Bike Project like they were doing before. And they started using Trail Forks because a lot of people fell out of love with IMBA and all this other stuff. So they started using Trail Forks. And that's when Trail Forks was free. And then all the backlash that they got when they started making people pay. It's like, now that you've done all this work, you're going to have to pay them for that, And
but part of that's because they went to outdoor. They went to outdoor, or whatever.
And I think
not
it was
outdoor,
outside.
Outside,
outside, and it was getting they were Pink Bike, and they got bought by Outside and all this other stuff, and it's like
Stink Bike.
I know it's. But if you wanted to buy a 25-year-old downhill bike for a good price, that was the website for you.
It still is.
perfect.
I seriously go there when I'm looking for used bikes. Like
Did we buy that bike? Did we buy Jakey's bike off of that?
Yeah, and that dude. So,
But you can't buy a downhill bike, a good downhill. Like if you want an old school Santa Cruz or something, that's the place to buy a bike.
Yeah. So we bought a bike for our buddy Jakey Poo. Yeah. We bought it on there. We reached out and he actually listened to the podcast. He was a listener, so it was sweet the way it worked.
But he was Grapefruit. He was a Grapefruit
he's
guy.
From Grapefruit.
Oh, so he was down in that way.
Beautiful.
He said it was amazing.
What was the bike we bought? I forgot.
We bought him a Banshee.
A Banshee.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it's
so there's a famous painter named Hot Dog out of California, like custom painter, like just one of the best pinstripers and custom painters you ever went. I go to his shop one day, and he used to. All those guys in SoCal used to ride downhill. Like they go up and ride all the parks like Mammoth and all this other stuff.
I'm so jealous of that.
And so I go to his shop the one day, and there's this big, massive old Santa Cruz that weighs, sucker's got to weigh 70 pounds, and he's pedaling around on it. I'm like, so I get my bike. I was like, have you ridden a new bike? He's like, and I was like, this bike basically will handle everything this bike has, and it's probably more than half the weight less than this bike is. And then finally some kid comes in and wants that bike for going to Mammoth. And because if you ride a chairlift, those bikes are great because it's just a heavy bike that sucks up everything. Mm-hmm. But if you have to pedal it, it's 3-speed. And it's like, who wants? I was like, I've got 12 and I still want 4 more gears.
Right.
You know, and it's like, so he wound up getting a new bike out of it. And it was pretty cool. But it was just like, you forget where we come from. And it's like, you watch those old mountain bike videos and dudes are basically on gravel bikes, like jumping off of stuff. And I was like, I wouldn't jump off that my current bike. And I got all this travel.
Do you find, and this is a question for both you guys, because you just sparked something that, so here you have someone who's meticulous. I mean, pinstriping is an art form, right? And they're meticulous with their hands and using it. It's a skill, it's a craft, it's all that stuff passed down. It's artistic, but it's using their hands in that way. I know that we look at a lot of XC guys and we call them dentists and we make all those jokes. But in your side of things, I mean, again, you're an artist like I am, right? We're craftsmen too, right? We have both sides of that. Literally, we ride downhill scarier stuff, which is risky because if I were to lose an arm to just a shoulder injury, I can't film for a few days, which takes away. Same way with these guys. Do you find that in the business, have you seen overall this trend of like the guys that want to take risks and ride a little bit more edgier stuff also work with their hands?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's that blue collar mentality, you know. I mean, it's one of those ones where like I've worked with my hands my whole life, and it's gritty. So you like that gritty lifestyle. There's still guys that are hot rod guys. I see skateboarding, you know, and it's like
so crazy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's like, and they're good skateboarders. Well, Steve Caballero, like he rides mountain bikes now too. But I was a guest artist at Metallica's music festival with some of my photography. And there's the band Fu Manchu. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Yes.
So they're playing,
we love Fu Manchu.
And they have a half pipe next to it. And Steve Caballero's on there, and I think Christian Hosoi was out there too. And like so,
that's awesome.
So
and those guys got to be in their
playing.
50s.
Yeah. So Fu Manchu's out there, and those dudes are still doing shit on a skateboard I couldn't do when I was 12. You know, and it's like, but like I'll watch, and then we had that whole conversation about like people do a YouTube video where like, this guy's first time on a bike, and we're throwing him down a red trail at Jared's place. And you're like, oh, shit. Then you go on and like, well, this is pro BMX racer. He got a gold medal last year in the Olympics. So, like, some guys just have that, you know. It's like, you know, like guys that rode BMX as a kid, or like I have buddies who ride bikes that used to race snowmobiles. And it's like some people just have that, but it's all dudes that have worked with their hands. It's
here's another question about the car bike link.
Yeah.
So do you see, like, I built my bike, I care about it, I build it.
Yep.
Right? You see dudes that build their cars.
Yep.
And you see dudes that buy their cars.
Yep.
Is there a different level of like when you go to photograph like a hot rod that this dude put all of his, I'm not saying the P word.
Yeah.
The passion word.
Yeah, don't say passion. Don't say game
passion.
changer.
But do you, when you photograph a hot rod like that, is there a different energy around it?
Well, I'm lucky, and I'm also broke because of the same mentality. As I would rather hang out with the guys in the shop than I would with the guys who actually pay to have the cars built.
Right.
And because I just like that. Those guys that work with their hands.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and that's who my friends are, is those guys. And that's the guys. So, you know, talking about guys who build cars, I have a buddy named Aaron, and we'll go back to the SE thing. It's like that dude's worked with his hands whole life, great custom painter. And he invited me one day to, like, I was going through Ohio. I was like, oh, come ride with my buddies. Well, his buddies all ride those SE bikes, and it's like a town takeover.
There's one
So I
Biloxi's
got.
like that.
Oh,
now,
it's
too.
if you've not done one, it's the best thing ever. It's like the best community thing I've done in bikes in a long time.
Yeah, Biloxi's on
Like,
that now.
Yeah, so I get on my mountain bike and we meet at this burger place and we ride through town. It's 23 miles. Dudes are riding wheelies and endos. It's all these old dudes you wouldn't think would be able to ride a bike, you know, when you see them. But like, it's that culture's so good.
Yeah.
With the scene we've done, you know.
Because it's all this. Drew's working.
Yeah, Drew's working. Do we need to take a break and make a cut, or what's whatever you want to do? I'll keep.
No,
talking.
we always keep rolling.
As you can tell, I have no problem talking.
Last time we were doing this, we filmed in Huntsville, and we had a.
Yeah. Well, but bike culture's.
Well, she is.
But the bike
Maybe.
culture's so good right now in the BMX and mountain bikes. You know, it's like, because it's so much funner than, oh, hey, I've got to put on spandex and I've got to wear a. You know,
And that's what I think, and I might have said this in past podcasts. I know I did.
Yeah.
But what happened to me is I get into mountain biking. I didn't mountain bike when you met me when I was building wagons.
Oh yeah, no. Like,
Right,
when we
so-
met at Columbus that one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm building custom lowrider kids wagons for anybody that didn't know.
Yeah.
Also, Dale Boyd.
That's
wagon
back when you were
management.
cool.
Back when I was cool. So I'm building those, and then I go into mountain biking. Well, I get into mountain biking. I go XC, and I'm racing XC stuff, and then I go epic XC stuff where you're
Yep.
doing endurance races, and then I'm like, shit, I want my bike to be fun again.
Yep.
Right. I want to have fun, so I build an enduro bike. I ride 6 miles,
And all
and
you
I'm
do is
happy.
have a
And I'm
well, that's
happy.
what me and my wife's whole mentality we got into. Like, we started running, and like, running is exercise.
Yeah.
Bikes are fun.
That's what I do,
And it's
yeah.
like, and so like Team Trail Party, when they do enduro race, they do party laps. So you can run. So like during the enduro, you can run that section as much as you want, and they take your fastest time. And they take all the part that's like, because like if you've ever done a real enduro, like if you mess up one little bit in your run, like, well, you're done for the day.
Yep.
And it's like, so it a lot of the beginners get kicked. Plus, you've got people sitting behind you going, hey, you got to go, and all this other stuff. But on party laps, you're like, hey, you know what? I have all day to do this.
It's a group ride.
And it's a group ride. And it's like you go down, you have fun with your buddies. And if you've got a buddy that's faster, you're like, well, let me follow you down there, you know? So it's
Yeah.
so it makes everybody better. Because like you get to run with faster people and see good lines. Because like until you see good lines,
Maybe that's our
like
next
you don't
race
even
style.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the good thing. Like if I hook you up with a local,
Yeah.
like they'll show you the lines.
Yeah.
And it's like if just going to ride something's not always fun. So I always like to ride with locals when I show up
That's
at
the same.
Trailhead.
That's
and
totally
it's
the
like
same.
you'll probably drop me on the uphill, but I'll try to stay with you on the downhill. you
Oh,
know,
they're
and
definitely going to drop my ass on the uphill. It's
Yeah.
like the vertical climb is how many thousand feet?
It's
I'm
not
used to
that-
riding 100 feet.
It's not that bad, but there's some good stuff, and there's a lot of good trail outside of Scottsdale and all that stuff. And it's like I always recommend driving from here to there though, because you pass so much good trail between here and there though.
Where you drive
it's-
everywhere.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind
Driving for you is not.
Yeah, my Sprinter, for those who don't know, is a 2016. It debuted at SEMA, again the Sea Otter for hot rods.
Yeah.
In the Kelderman air suspension booth with 40,000 miles on it. And now today on the way here, it hit 350,000 miles.
That is insane to me.
So it
Its
doesn't
name?
sit.
What's its name?
It's named Homewrecker.
That's
because it keeps me
fantastic.
away from home. And it's actually it started out as an Airstream, and then me and my buddies painted it, or my buddies painted it because they wouldn't let me turn a wrench because I had to go do work, and they don't want me to take nothing apart. So
Very
they found
familiar,
out,
isn't it?
So it started out as one of the Airstream Interstates. So it's it's the big Sprinter van with the high roof. And so they found out when they started working on it, they had to get the windows out. They had to unbolt them from the inside. So the interior had to come out. And they did the whole thing in 26 days.
Holy
Yeah. So and it's
smokes.
Which we
custom
could-
satin painted.
You can put a
and-
picture of it in.
Yeah,
there.
I'll send you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
a
for
picture
sure,
of it and
for
stuff
sure.
too. And it's on method wheels, and it's got 3 Vire compressors. It's got train horns. It's got KC highlights. It's got 600 watts of 500 watts of Zamp solar on the roof. It's got 6 excess power batteries in it. It's got mountain bikes in it, all my gear. It's got a legit real espresso machine. It has a Profitec 400, which is like a real espresso machine. 'cause
We could
like our
literally just
coffee.
do a whole episode of the
Yeah, the
van.
home
I'd be
wrecker
all over
cribs.
it.
The
So-
cribs.
I'd love to do a home wrecker, like put it in the background, do the little tour gag, and do all that.
Well, I need to do a tour of it. So I do this thing whenever I do a review of something. Like everybody, like someone sent me this, so here's my review. Well, I'm getting ready to do my first walkthrough on the van. I waited till it had over 300,000 miles on the paint job. And it's like, so you see all the rock
Holy
chips. A
smokes.
deer hit me in Iowa last year on my wife's birthday.
Which makes it even better. 'Cause
Yeah,
you
but that's
use
the
it.
thing. Because every time you see one of these van life videos, you see, like there's plants hanging in the corner.
Oh, yeah,
And there's
everything's
books on a
perfect.
shelf. And
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this person? Then you see like, oh, it's outside their house in San Diego. Like the thing's probably never left California.
Well, and that's the same thing when you go film or like photograph a hot rod that's badass that has been driven.
Yeah.
It looks even cooler. It's like, oh wait, there's
What's
mud
always
inside.
the best. And it's like, I totally, and for the most part, a lot of people, like I'll post a video of one come off a trailer and people are like, oh, I can't believe it. But that's usually somebody else's car and the builder's bringing it for me to photo shoot. And like, until that guy takes that car, it's not their car to put 1,000 miles on.
Right.
You know, I mean, they'll still put 1,000 miles on to almost every one of those badass cars you see. They've been, as long as the client lets them do what they're supposed to, they drive them. You know, that way the car's drivable, no matter how nice of a piece of art it is. But whether or not the owner decides he wants to ride it, you know, do it or not. So like if it blows a tire doing a burnout or something like that, and the guy, well, they've got to put tires on it. You know, the owner doesn't have to put tires on it. So you don't look at that part. But like most of those cars, even if they're $500,000, they get driven. Yeah. But usually they do the show season for a year, so they get trailered. And then they just go to local shows, drive around the neighborhood. Then there's like Good Guys does an amazing road tour between a lot of their shows. Like they'll drive them between the shows. It's just stuff people don't usually see. So I'm trying to show more of that on my YouTube channel, more of the behind the scenes of stuff actually being driven and stuff like that. So
do you have any? Is there anything like vehicle wise, like you saw a car that you know, like it was like 1 in a million, where you got to photograph something where even you were like, I know you appreciate them all, but the one where you're just like the holy F bombs of.
I'm in love with 63 to 65 Buick Rivieras. And it's like, I've never met one.
That was a Good Guy's car, right? The orange one? Was that Hot Rod of the Year?
Oh, no. So
the one
that was Custom Rod of the Year, that burgundy one from Texas.
What about the orange one? The like rust orange one?
I don't know which one you're
had
talking
the exhaust that came out where the
there was a Riddler winner that was yellow.
Maybe it's that one. Yeah,
that's one that was built in Canada.
Okay,
yeah, that's a great car because you're talking about like a Riddler car is $1 million build.
Yeah,
and you can go online and find videos of JF doing donuts and autocrossing that car and everything. I think they autocrossed it at Good Guys. That year, and everybody was like, I was there that day, and everybody goes, JF doesn't build anything that you can't drive, and it's like I still have never photographed that Rivy, but since I love Rivies, you know, we'll get to. Every time I'm photographing a Rivy, my wife will send me a text like, "So we're not making any money today, are we? We're shooting Rivy." It's like I shot my buddy from Bill Ganal from South City Rod and Custom. He's got a pink Rivy, and I freaking love it, and I literally shot it to hang on our bathroom wall. So, what the hell? Someone's breaking in.
Our bikes all fell. Oh, it's
Noah bringing in stuff.
Tearing the door down.
Crashing in.
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing a podcast.
We were. It's all over now. No, just kidding. So, but I do like 63 to 65 Rivieras.
Yeah.
And so what got me into custom cars and the style I really like, I used to be into mini trucks and all this other stuff. But then Jimmy Vaughn, the great Jimmy Vaughn from Fabulous Thunderbirds, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan's brother, like he has the most badass gold metal flake Riviera ever.
Oh, right.
And so like in the early 90s, it was in or late 90s, it was in a Car Stereo magazine. And as soon as I saw it, it was like seeing boobs for the first time.
Right.
And I'm just like, it's like seeing the Sears catalog when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, you look at it and you go, I don't know what I'm feeling, but this is where it's at. And it's like, and Jimmy Vaughn's just cool. Like he's cool in there, and he's got this gold Rivy with white tuck and roll interior, and it's got a stereo in it, and it's got wire wheels on it. And I'm like, and from then on, it's like I'm into customs, and it's like, so anything that's 60s like Larry Watson style paint jobs and stuff like that, it's like, man, I'm in. So that's even my mountain bikes get a little bit of that. Everything's got to be metal flake. It's like I love metal flake, so like even the Revel is that purple metal flake with the satin. So like I don't buy just a base colored vehicle anymore. Like Homewrecker, even though it has satin paint on it, has a ton of metallic in it. So like when you see, it'll go from the darkest copper to it's basically the color's called copper penny.
Yeah.
And it goes to the color of a shiny brand new penny just because it has that much metallic in it.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So like sometimes, like I'll be going down the road like it's sunset on 10 or something like that, and my buddy will be like, hey, I just passed you. I was like, you sure it was me? And he's like, I know it was you.
Right. Big copper penny driving down the road.
Yeah, just a big copper penny driving down the road. And it's 25 foot long.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's...
I think what's cool is like all the trends that you've probably seen.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like the car trends, the bigger wheels, the slams.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's the same thing with bike stuff. You know, like you go 26-inch wheels, 29s. Oh, 27 and a half. Oh, now it's mullets. And it's like, oh, it's gravel bikes. Oh, it's this bike. It's like, oh, no, it's...
I remember building a truck. I built a truck in early 2000s.
Yep.
And I put 20s on it, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!"
I was the
Those are
first
so
one.
big.
This is how old I am. I'm gonna date myself. I was the first one in my local clique to have 17s. And I remember when I rolled in with my 17s finally, everybody's like, "Oh, are those 17s?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And then it
crazy.
seemed like 2 weeks later you could get 20s.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm already not cool already." But
Well,
that's
the year after I built my truck, they came out stock with 20s.
yeah.
The Dodge Ram had 20s.
Well,
on it.
that
I was
and
like,
those Impala SSs
Yeah.
came out with 20s on them. And everybody loved those. Like I'd still have one of those. And now you see a 20, and you're like, "Oh, that's tiny." Like you can get a factory wheel on an Audi station wagon in 22s now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ugh. It's like, and then, I do a lot of the motorcycle photography. And then so I do a lot of the big wheel baggers with 30-inch front wheels. It's like not my style, but I love it because those are the dudes that are paying custom painters to paint stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, I love custom paint. I love metal flakes and graphics and all that stuff. So like, you can hate on those bikes all you want to, but I was like, but they're keeping a lot of great painters in business.
Right.
And it's like, you're not by having like, oh, I've had a black car. And it's like, and black's tough, don't get me wrong, but it's like, I'd rather see crazy paint all day long.
I had one of my wagons got custom painted by
right.
Killer Designs by Darren.
Oh, nice.
You know
yeah.
him?
Yeah, Darren's a good dude.
Yeah, so he painted it at Good Guys in Columbus. And this is actually a funny story. I take the wagon up there. He's like, he was pissed. Some dude before him didn't want to pay for what he did before me. And so he's like mad, yelling at this dude, throwing stuff. And he goes, "What's next?" Like asked the girl. And she goes, "Do you mind? Could you fit this wagon in?" And so he's like, "Yeah." He throws it up on the table and he's like, "Come over here." He's like, "What do you want?" And I start telling him. He goes, "Wait, who built this?" I was like, "I did." He goes, "I know. I follow you on Instagram."
Oh, nice.
And I was like, "Hell yeah!" So he settles down. He's like super cool. Hand paints it real quick. I was like, "Dude, do whatever you think would be badass. Colors, anything, whatever you want." So he does it, and I was like, "How much do I owe you?" The girl said, like $250 or $300. He's like, "Bro, just give me $20 and tell him I did it on Instagram."
Nice.
So I was like, I'm pulling it away, and my wife goes, "You look like a little kid that just stole something." I was like, "I did. I just stole. This is awesome."
I have two buddies, the Engel brothers. Like
Yeah.
they're known for making these just
Badass
over the top
cars.
strollers.
Right.
But they're legit, like some of the
I've
baddest.
talked to one of the brothers.
Yeah, probably Dave.
Yeah.
And Dave's like, when I go to California, he lives outside of Huntington Beach, and I sleep on his couch, and the Sprinter parks in his driveway. And but Dave's one of my best friends, and we pick on each other all day long. But like legit, him and his brother legit just badass fabricators, can do metalwork by hand, and
Holy
they have
smokes.
a hand in a ton of great builds over the years, but you just don't know they were involved in it. But they're known for these strollers they did, and the great painter Danny D, who passed away, had painted a lot of these strollers. But it's just one of those ones is like you get known for strollers, and it's like, but no, we chop tops,
Right.
We
Yeah,
do
they
all
have a
this
big
other
long
stuff.
body car, don't they?
Yeah, they have he has Blanche.
The long roof. Isn't his name Long Roofer?
Well, yeah, so that's Greg. That's
Okay.
his brother. He's in Colorado because being artists like we are, it's nice when we have a wife who has a real job because Greg has
Not even an artist.
a wife with a real job, so they had to break up the band, and Dave and Greg had to go to Colorado. But it's like, but Dave and Greg are like some of my best friends, and it's like, and then I should visit Greg more because he's in Colorado. He's around all the good trails.
Yeah, and when he says strollers, he means like badass pedal cars that you can
pedal
put a
car
kid
strollers,
in
like
that you
big
can push.
ones.
Dude,
Yeah.
they're so
I'll send you
sick.
some pictures of those.
Those
too,
are
so
sick.
it's- Yeah,
Yeah.
it's-
I mean, I met him because I was in the little kid car world.
Oh
for
yeah,
a
that's
little
like
while.
I think you know what, to be honest with you, is I think maybe me and Dave sent me a picture of one of your strollers is how you and I knew who you were.
Yeah.
And then I think we met at Columbus or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And it was like
It's
I think
crazy.
that was
It was crazy for me because I was a little dude in a garage that had a wrench, and I started building them.
You want to hear a crazier van story than my Sprinter van?
Yes.
So I used to do this in a 1964 Corvair van that's airbagged and custom painted. I drove it 170,000 miles in 4 years, a little over 4 years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So I'll send you pictures of that too. So like I used to sleep on people's couches. This is before I mountain biked,
Right.
before I road biked and stuff like that. But I used to sleep on people's
yeah,
couches.
you had the van then.
Yeah,
You
it was
didn't
called the
have
Boogie
Sprinter.
Van.
Yeah.
So that's when we originally met. I was in the Boogie Van.
Oh my God.
And but it was all custom painted and had Kicker did a stereo in it. Like I've always done work for Kicker, the stereo company.
Yeah.
And those guys are like best friends of me. So like one of my buddies that I've been friends with forever, they did the stereo in it. And but then I blew the motor in it after all those years, and then I bought a new car. And then my wife had the idea, like, oh, we should get an RV. So we started out with a 36-foot RV, and we traveled the country and rode bikes, and like we did road then. So like we'd ride Mount Diablo in California. I had an old steel Colnago.
Oh, right.
Like Rappaport team paint job, and I was like, that's why I'd ride. And then we became friends with the guys from Independent Fabrication. in New Hampshire. My buddy Chris Rowe used to paint all their bikes, and that guy there is probably one of the best painters I've ever seen. He's painted bicycles his whole life, and I started riding one of their stainless bikes, and they build badass hardtails and stuff. And then I think they've recently, over the years, it's gotten tough, and I think there's no longer an indie fab. But it's just crazy how just being into cars and riding bikes, how I've met so many great people over the country. But it all started in that Corvair van in Houston, Texas. We bought it. I think we test drove it 6 miles and drove it home 400 to Florida when my wife lived in Florida before we moved to Texas. And then we loaded everything we had after we got married on on my in-laws' porch, because they said whatever we don't spend for our wedding, we can take to Houston with us while my wife went to get her doctorate in mathematics. So we loaded everything into her Scion and my Corvair van and drove to Houston.
Brilliant.
And then
That's awesome.
I was a service manager for car dealerships, and I was doing that. And then they got bought out by a big conglomerate, and that's just, the big conglomerate dealerships suck. And I was like, I just don't want to make this change one more time. And I wrote her one day, and I was like, I think I have enough photography work. I want to do that full time. And then she's like, okay. And I tell that story where she says okay, where she basically says okay, and she's never had a moment's sleep the rest of her life, because you go from having a steady job where you get paid every week to, like, people don't realize on car magazines, like when I shoot a feature for a car magazine, until that magazine runs that, I don't get paid for it.
That's right.
So like if it takes them a year and a half to run it, I don't get paid for a year and a half.
Right.
But luckily I shoot something almost every day, so I've got so much rotation. It's just getting, like, you'll have a magazine sitting on 30 features, and it's like, well, that's a lot of money sitting there. But and then they, you get into politics of like, well, I haven't run so-and-so's work in a while. I can't just make the whole magazine your features. And I'm like, why not?
Why wouldn't you do
But every once in a while, you'll have a month where you have like 10 features hit in 1 month, and you're like, woohoo. And then the next month you have one feature, and you're like, oh.
Oh, it's the game it's the old feast or famine game.
Yeah, yep.
That's all we do is play
But
feast
luckily
or famine.
I have a wife.
Yeah, but she has a badass truck too.
Oh, so my wife we have another custom painted vehicle called the High Plains Drifter, and it's built to be a bike hauler to go 100 mile an hour down gravel roads, and it's a GMC Sierra on.
Dude, if you saw it,
yeah, I'll send you pictures of it too. But it's all custom painted, like it's hand lettered High Plains Drifter on the hood.
Oh, sick.
And underneath so it's satin on the tops. Everything I got satin painted, even the Corvair van satin painted. But the axles and everything in it are shiny, and then the top is satin. It's got 11 old school KC highlights on it with like the smiley faces on it.
Yeah, boy.
And the cool thing is they're all LED now, so you can go down the road with all of them on, and it shines through the yellow. And it's got a full kicker stereo in it. It's got BDS, which is owned by Fox now. So, shout out to Fox. So it has a complete Fox coilover conversion in the front, so it gives a lot of travel in the front. It's got Devers rear shocks in the rear. It's got a slide out bed rack in it. It's got all Rhino rack bike racks up on the top of the bed. Because Undercover, so it went to SEMA with Undercover. Well, it went with Kicker. Then Undercover saw it. They gave us the bed cover, and the bed cover was the first one where the bike's mounted on the bed cover. That's like one of the first bed covers to do that. And Undercover's like, "Hey, we're going to send you one of those." And so they sent us one. So when we went to SEMA, we were the first, and they saw it in the parking lot. It was going into Kicker's booth, and they're like, "No, we want it out front with our stuff." So they took it and put it out front. So it was right out front of SEMA, and then it's got the Rhino racks on the roof, and it's got those on the back, and it's all diamond tuck leather interior in it, and that's my wife's baby. But that sucker's got 150,000 miles on it now too. I don't have anything that doesn't have 150,000 miles on it.
Yeah, you guys drive whatever you have. You drive it, and you drive it long.
And believe it or not, for as hard as that truck's been driven, it doesn't have a lot of rock chips and stuff on it, because it's all. So we painted. There was a very famous from the late 70s, early 80s, the Desert Fox GMC trucks. Yeah. So it's painted to mimic the Desert Fox. And so the rear end housing, my buddy, back to Lucky Strike Designs again, he did the lowrider graphics on the Sprinter as well. He painted a fox on the rear end housing with a camera around its neck with my logo.
Sick.
And then he did this crazy logo on the rear tailgate. Looks because we did the whole paint job of like Vice City with Grand Theft Auto. So it's that kind of feeling with all the lettering on it. So that logo's on the skid plate and on the tailgate. And then everybody was like, "Oh, those stickers are awesome." I was like, "Well, it's all hand painted," and it's like, because that's how talented that guy is.
Unreal.
But I'll send you pictures of it too. But that's JC's truck. So, but we're car poor. Like we have a 800 square foot house in Texas, but we have like 3 epic vehicles.
That's okay though. I mean, in your case,
and we have nice bikes too. So
it's all a tax write off too.
Yeah.
That's just me being the business owner for the moment. Can't help myself to slide into.
Well, I claim mileage because of how much mileage I drive every year.
Holy cow! You'd have to.
Yeah. Well, I went from spending and so my wife takes care of all of the financial end of it. I'm that one. It's like I have this plastic thing I stick into the fuel pump.
Yeah.
But she made me aware the other day that we went from $1,000 a month in diesel to $2,000 a month in diesel with diesel prices last year.
Yeah.
And so like I turned down. I usually do Scottsdale, Pleasanton, Del Mar, and then get a chance to ride Vail Lake, which is an awesome mountain bike trail. And I cut all that out of the trip this year because of the fact of diesel being as high as it was. But at least I'm getting a lot of diesel now, closer to just a little over, like $3.50 to under $4. So it's like that's a little more manageable. When it was getting up to like $7 in California, it was starting to hurt.
It blows me away often how people just a lot of times, if you're not in the industry, you don't understand like the amount of cost of just random stuff,
yeah.
like the fuel and the food and all those things. And it all adds
a funny
up.
story on that. I made that post the other day. I was like, doesn't everybody get 6 to 7 oil changes a year?
Right.
And then I go through 2 sets of Falcon tires a year, and they're good tires.
Right.
I run their heavier duty. I run their Wild Peaks on everything. So I run the Wild Peaks on the Sprinter as well, and it's the best tire I've ever ran on it because it's heavy and it has to run a light truck tire, so it eats front tires. But they got rid of their lower, I don't want to call it lower quality, but their lighter duty in the Wild Peak. Now it's all heavy, so it looks like an off-road tire.
Yeah.
And I was worried it was going to be noisy, but like that tire is great. And it's like, I think I've got, I've got 20,000 on a set now, and I don't rotate the tires on it because you have to dismount to rotate on a dually Sprinter. So I just buy front tires. Right. And it's like, so I'll start out, I'll buy a front tire. We'll pull the rears and look at the rears, make sure they're wearing good, make sure nothing's leaking. Then we'll put the rears back on, run a new set of fronts. And then by the time those fronts are back out again, we just replace all 6.
Right.
So that's how we do.
Jesus.
So that's 2 sets a year.
So whenever you guys think that living in a Sprinter van, taking pictures of hot rods is the life.
Yeah.
This is the...
Well, and then you always have little stuff that breaks. Like I had a slight propane leak the other day, so I had to go through and find that leak. And then you had, so the Airstreams come with a power sewer dump.
Yeah.
And it broke on me 3 times. So I just made it gravity. So I had to basically disconnect everything and then run regular sewer heavy pipe to it so they would dump like a regular RV.
Right.
Because you just can't, your tanks are full. It won't dump now. And it's like, I know they do it because those things are made like VIPs. They're not meant for someone to drive them 350,000 miles and live in them. They're meant to the family goes mountain biking on the weekend and we take that and we just crash in the van. It's not meant to like, you're in this thing every day.
But it's Andy Dufresne, your sewer system.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
yeah, for sure.
But like we've been lucky. Like my buddy DA that did all the work for Kicker, built a lot of their demo vehicles. He built me an aluminum bed that's raised. The bikes fit up underneath, and it's completely removable. Yeah. Like if I have to remove it to work on stuff, so like I have all the space under the bed and all that. So with a high roof, you got a ton of room to sleep, and it's been great because I used to stay in a hotel every night, and it's like you can't get a good hotel for $100 a night anymore.
No, that's what I was gonna say.
Like $100 is a cheap hotel now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's sketchy.
And not to mention if it's like, oh, I have to go to this car show and it's car show weekend. Well, that room's $225, that $100 room. And it's, so it's...
Plus you're on site now.
Yeah, I'm on site. Yeah, I'm lucky that a lot of the show promoters let me sleep on location. Of course, working for good guys, it's usually at fairgrounds, so they have RV hookups for fairs.
Yep.
So, like, I get full hookups at a lot of the fairgrounds and stuff like that. So,
if you guys are bike guys, our friends are bike people listening to this, if you ever get a chance to go to a car show, go to Good Guys.
Oh, yeah.
I love Good Guys.
Yeah, because you can see the best of everything.
Yeah, and it's, 68 and older?
No, it's
72.
No, so it's almost to let square body trucks in. So I think in late model Camaros, you can go. I want to think it's. I'm so wrong, but I think it's 88.
Really?
It's either 85.
Because when I was going, it was 72.
No, they changed it now.
72,
and they've always done
Sunday.
They do the All American
model.
Sunday. So as long as it's American powered on Sunday, no matter what year it is.
Wow.
But the other cool thing is they have to drive in and drive out every day.
Yeah, you can't leave anything in there overnight unless you're a vendor.
If you're standing in there, you'll hear them run. That's my favorite part, like getting to hear them run or drive in and out. Like well,
that's like on my YouTube channel. Like I had this great idea that I'm going to go to these shops, I'm going to show these cars, and I'm going to show the people and all this other stuff, and then I'll film a car show, and all I do is I show the cars actually moving and running and driving and all that stuff. Not a ton of stuff static. And then it's like I'll get 150,000 views on a truck show, and then I'll put my heart and soul into a good video of a car that a guy worked his ass off, and it's like, oh, I got 1,000.
Yep. I had a YouTube channel. That's where Panasonic found us and sponsored us and called us and because we compared a Panasonic to a Red camera. So we took a $3,000 camera, compared it to, and people couldn't tell the difference.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, it's composition.
Well,
right?
still,
and the
when
same thing. Those videos went viral.
Yep.
And then we put out really in depth how to make money as a filmmaker and all this stuff. Nothing.
Well, that's what people forget is like all across the Fuji line, even though you have this massive sensor in the GFX and then you have their X, if you shoot JPEGs and use a film simulation and you take that picture and don't blow it up and look at it 4x6, you can't really tell the difference between those two pictures.
Nope.
Especially something that the exposure's equal across it. But the reason why that resolution on the 100 megapixels is so good is like if you're a stop, you can shoot a stop under and then bring and keep that contrast and just bump up what you need in that photo, and you just keep that gritty, dirty. And you see a lot of that in my photo is that grittiness of that hot rod in like an old factory or something like that. And it's all because of that contrast. And you can't really do that with like a regular full frame sensor or an APS-C or something like that.
No, but that's one of the things I appreciate about your work is sometimes I see photographers, not all of them, but a lot of them are just using cameras because that's the camera they want to use.
Yeah.
When not to do a Marshall McLuhan, but the medium that you're using, it happens to be medium format, but the medium you're using is helping convey the message of the photograph, right?
Right.
That to me means everything. That's back to old film days. Like I used to think about film stocks, and we would think about, wasn't it Fuji that used to make, was it Vita?
Oh yeah, Velvia.
We used to call it Velveeta. But
I used to call it Velveeta too. That's what made me think about it. So.
Yeah. And so you had this
macaroni and cheese sounds?
Oh yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
No.
That's a different podcast.
100% on that. Yeah. But it was like that. It was such this super saturated vibe, and it was this really great look. But that was film stocks. Yep. And so now like cameras have gone that way. And so for me, it's like micro four thirds has advantages in some capacity. I don't totally know what they all are nowadays.
Yep.
Full frame and video doesn't. Large format, I mean, Jesus, that's a whole different beast. So it's interesting, and I'm just saying it as a compliment. I appreciate your work because I can see the medium format being used. I can see, like, when I look at it, I get excited by the way it's being framed up and the look. So great job.
We had this discussion earlier, too, as you run into, the way cars are shot now, especially supercar stuff, as everybody does it like they do portraits. Like, well, f2.8, I'm shooting this car, and then I'm going to throw these filters on there, and then it's going on the gram, and it's like, but then if you had to blow that car up, it's like nothing past the headlights in focus.
Right.
Then people, when you try to submit that to a company or you try to submit that to a magazine, and they're like, we can't use any of this.
Right.
It's like, because none of it's in focus. Like, it looks good on the gram, but it's like, so like a lot of my stuff I post on the gram is shot with a $10,000 medium format camera to go down here and be bumped down in resolution. Everybody's like, oh, it looks the same as this over here. And it's like, well, I did some 5 foot by 12 foot prints at Greening Auto Company of stuff I shot for them, and even they were blown away. They were like, "Holy crap!" And it's like until you see that stuff big, and that's where a lot of my stuff winds up big,
right?
And it's like I think I'm going to start printing my own stuff too because it's that old saying, and I'm going to roll my own eyes when I say it, as like a photograph's not a photograph till it's printed.
Yep.
And it's like I think we miss out that you don't really see how nice some stuff really is. And I was like, I would like to do a large format book of my work and all these badass cars. And I'm just trying to find a good printer. And I want to keep it around $50, and that's going to be the hard part, to do good paper and keep it around $50.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people miss. It's the same vibe on all. It, again, goes back to the medium. Yep. It's an old statement, but it means a huge. The touch of that paper, the vibe of it, all of those things go into it. The way it's archived, like if it's on archival pieces, when I see them in spaces, the Crewsden guy I was talking about earlier, all his stuff was large format, so it was displayed massive. Like I think it was like 10 bys, major, huge. 10 foot major panels for you to, because it's large format, for you to stand and look at and appreciate. Same way, it's like when I see your work blows up that way. So it's the idea. I think it's fascinating that you pursue.
Nothing makes you realize you screwed up more until a company blows up one of your prints 50 foot at SEMA, and you see that one little thing in the corner you didn't take out, and you're like, oh.
I tell everybody all the time when I did when I was in the movie game, I would the first time I got to mix in the real projection theater.
Yep.
Like you're mixing it and you're like, oh my God, look at that. Oh no. What is that in the corner? I mean, things that I've looked at it 100,000 times online editing, and now it's just total garbage water.
Yeah.
I get it. That blow.
Well, I hate it. Usually a month after I've shot something, I hate it.
Yeah,
I'm like, I should have done it this way.
I get
and
it.
It's like, but that's the thing is like, I'm always moving forward, and it's like, I'm so like, I don't want to hear it from people today. It's like, I can't make it work. And it's like, I used to have to like read books and like chase stuff down and like no one in my industry would show me how to do anything.
Right.
There's a YouTube video for everything now. Don't tell me it's hard.
Right.
It's like, just because you don't have patience doesn't mean it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to have patience. It's like, it takes time. And memory cards are cheap. And in relation, cameras are cheap. You can shoot with a phone. I mean, it's like everyone should take pictures because everybody sees everything different, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, and there's different levels. But if you want to make a go at doing what I'm doing, the world's your oyster. It's like, because it's so much easier now than when I first started. Because I started on film.
Right.
You know, and it's
Right.
like you'd shoot 10 rolls to shoot a magazine feature. And then one of the rolls didn't load right or something like that. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, and that's one of those moments where I tell people all the
Yep.
time, you'll never know
Yep.
what it was like to cut the negative and then be like, oh, fuck.
I think the worst thing people have a digital now is because you get that setting. I know the Fujis have it, is like shoot without a card.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I never leave that up because of course, Fuji always says next. And so, you know, when it says next, he's like, oh, it doesn't have a card in it. But I've seen people just start filming,
Yeah.
you know, with new cameras. And they're like, oh, we've been shooting for 5 minutes. And I realized I didn't have a card in. You know, it's because they have it on shoot, you know, with that. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, I have to check myself. I check for little red dots all the
yeah.
time.
Well,
I
that's
have
the
to do
thing with
my
the
things.
Fuji stuff is like a lot of the stuff Sema raised, there's all kinds of red light.
Yep.
You know, and it's like, but the Fuji stuff doesn't really have a legit, hey.
Yeah.
But I use the Atomos Ninja, and so you get
Yep.
that red screen
Yep,
around
sure
it.
do.
So, and they're like,
I have
oh,
one
yeah.
too.
Yeah, so it's like I like that because, and then also too, I'm 51, so I like having a screen.
I'm
this big.
100% with you.
And I'm like, it's broad daylight, and you're in Dallas trying to shoot good guys,
Yep.
and you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
I can't see nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Well, is there anything? So where? Just so we can wrap up and go get tacos.
oh yeah.
Where can people follow you? What's the outlet?
So I'm at Not Stock Photo on everything, NOTSTOCKPHOTO. And my website's notstockphotography.com, and I haven't updated that in 15 years, and I'm working on that now.
Sweet.
And but yeah, so yeah, my Instagram is where I post everything, and then Instagram dumps into Facebook. Then we also have a YouTube channel or Not Stock Photo, and I'm probably going to start showing more mountain biking into this year. Because I get to ride so much stuff, even just to show little shorts of, hey, look at this great place. And, you know, it's, I mean, there's some great stuff. And I didn't know I know it's not far from you guys. Have you guys went to Columbus and rode Standing Boy yet?
Oh yeah, I have. He has it. Standing Boy.
I was
outstanding.
I was just there right before Christmas, and they're building more flow lines in there.
They got
now,
a jump line too.
Yeah, they got a jump line. I just rode the jump line, and my wife loved it. My wife loves nothing the first time she rides it.
The climb up on that son of a bitch is a little.
It's not bad, though.
Yeah, but no, it's fun.
Yeah.
But the ride down is a blast.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Standing Boy's a well built trail.
Yeah.
We've been talking.
Well, you
we've
got
tried-
an e-bike. I don't want to hear this.
I didn't have it when I rode Standing Boy. All I had back then was a Scott Genius.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was too small.
So I know we were supposed to be ending, but my
Yeah, it's
very
okay.
first full suspension bike I rode at Oak Mountain. I had a buddy in Dallas had a Scott, and it weighed 16 pounds.
Jeez.
And so he's like, hey, you can have this bike. Just come get it. And it's like legit cross country, $10,000 race bike. And it's one of those rich hot rod guys. Like he was in Hawaii with his buddies.
Yeah.
And they all bought bikes. So he buys a $10,000 all carbon everything on it. So I go back to our shop in Houston, West End, and Trent in there, I was like, let's just put the beefiest 26-inch tire on it we can get, because I was 26s then. And so we put like some Butchers on it or something like that from Specialized. And I go there and we ride Oak Mountain, and we go up and we ride, you know, where Lightning and all that stuff is. Well, whatever that rock wall is down on that.
Blood
And,
Rock?
yeah. So basically it's like, you're on a bike, not in a bike.
Yep.
You know, that feeling. And I was like, I climbed so good that day, but I was never more scared on downhills in my life. But it got me into buying my first stump jumper, you know, from my aluminum stump jumper, and having actual travel, you know. And it's like, but that's one of those stories. It's like, it was kind of scary, and that was a Scott as well.
yeah, look, I
believe,
love
so.
that bike.
No, it was a great bike, but
was-
like if you want a cross country race, that was a bad dude.
And it was a good all around all mountain bike for down here. It did really well for me,
Yeah.
but it just for me it was just I'm in between. I'm an in betweener, so
Yeah.
it just was a little too small for me. And then I just wanted something a little more beefy because I had been hitting more aggressive stuff.
Yep.
And it just wasn't. And then I overdid it.
Yep.
Right. And then
Well,
I got mad and bought an e-bike.
I'm 5'11", and as long as bikes are now, when we do all that geometry through Lee likes bikes.
Yep.
And like his stuff is great.
Yep.
And I always wind up on a medium, and all my buddies the same size ride larges. And then when they get on my bike, because I run I basically don't cut my bars at all. You saw my bike.
Yeah.
And, and you get a lot of like, you can just whip that bike around. So when my buddies will ride the same bike in a large and, because you're like that in between. So like really they should be on a ML, not, like they should be one, like they're at the bottom end of the large, not the front end.
Yep.
So that bike's made for the middle. So like they're better off being at the top of the medium. So my buddies ride my medium. They're like, this is great.
Yeah.
And my wife being good at math, like she runs all the numbers on reach and all that stuff. So believe it or not, that Revel, and you've seen my stump jumper, is actually longer than the stump jumper.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's hard to
interesting.
believe.
That's
And
crazy.
I think it's taller. It's longer and taller, and they're both mediums.
So,
And so,
I mean,
but
you've got
that stump jumper seems so big when I got it.
They always feel that way.
And when you ride it, it feels bigger. But the Revel is less travel, but it's a longer bike.
Well, it's way more efficient. They say.
Yeah,
I
it's
remember reading
super
about it.
efficient. Revel
Yeah.
knocked it out of the park on that bike, and like I did, so funny sea otter story. And I know we're over and we're supposed to be eating tacos.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It
But
doesn't
so
matter on this show ever.
my wife, we camped at Sea Otter, and it was the first time I was there. And I have a buddy, Ironworks. His name's Roger. The dude is like 6'7", I believe, and he actually is one of my good friends. He's actually a great mountain biker. Like he races and all this other stuff. And he was on Yetis at the time, and so when we got there, I was like, well, we'll know Roger. And she's like, we're going to be at a place where no one knows you. So we're walking down the vendors area, and all of a sudden I hear not stock. And it's this guy selling weed products. Like he's selling,
God.
he's selling pipes and stuff like titanium pipes and stuff like that, And my wife's like, how does the weed guy know? It's like, you don't even do drugs or anything. And I was like, oh. So he comes and start talking to him. Well, he was helping his buddy when they started that company with marketing. Because it started really small, because it's all those guys from like those other companies got together. Yeah. So he's the one that put Revel on the map for me. So I was like, oh, I'll look into it. He's like, yeah, you should give him a chance. So like I was at a bike, like I still go to bike demos, and I'm like, oh, I want to ride a bike. It's like, and so I go and I'd ridden it, and I'd done a ton of like deep dive on it. I was like, I really like that bike. But that's when we were looking at JC upgrading her Yeti, and so once I started looking for a frame and I found they had that Revel, I was like, oh, I know that bike's good. And that's the one I wound up getting. And it's like, it's the best thing I ever did. Like as much as I love Dirt Reynolds and I miss the paint job, like this bike it's a rider's bike.
Right.
Like it's so good, And
That's
I
one of
love
the things it ended up winning Bike of the Year last year, which is the Fuel EX series, or sorry, the Fuel,
The
Fuel
Trek
EX.
Fuel, yeah.
I had the E,
EX
but the
nine.
EX won Bike of the Year. Well, I was telling them, I was like, guys, this ride's incredible. Even the EXE, not about the pedaling. I just mean the geometry felt good. And so it's the same kind of thing as like, I have to go demo stuff. It's hard to do here.
Oh, yeah.
I have nothing wrong. I have a Gorilla Gravity. I have no issue with that. American made bike, yay.
Yep.
But like at the same time, there are things, and I tell him this all the time, there's things that I probably would have looked at differently had I could have demoed it.
Well, we're in that thing now. My wife wants a gravel bike.
Yep.
And it's like, there's not really bike demos like they used to. You can't just go ride a gravel bike. And it's like, it's tough because we were friends with the guys from Indy Fab. And like back in the day, we could have been like, oh, my wife wants a gravel bike. Yeah. And it's like, like we don't have to pay $10,000, but you can still pay $6,000 and get a good gravel bike because we did photography for them, and we have a buddy. Actually, one of the painters left there, and he's at Alchemy now. And I really wanted to give the Alchemy mountain bikes a run for their money, and that was going to be my next thought when I went up in this Revel. So that was my other choice, is I wanted to run the Alchemy bike because the Alchemy bikes are good too, but you just don't get a chance to ride one.
Yeah, that's the problem I run into is like with the online bikes and all that kind of vibe, or the boutique bike. It's hard to get your hands on.
Well, so that's my other thing on the trail. Like, again, this podcast is over, but like I solely believe in going to brick and mortar. I'm like, I love all the online bikes. And I have no problem with people buying their bikes online, but you need to support your local bike shop. Yeah. Because that whole thing is like,
but I'm going to make an argument for a real LBS. And the reason I say that is because
definitely a real local.
I'm frustrated a little bit with like, I'm wearing Suck Creek. Like this is my favorite bike shop in the US and it's in Chattanooga. I'm a little, they're awesome, but I'm frustrated with like some of the Trek stores and stuff. It's so corporate, not knocking it because they have to be.
Well, Trek bought out all the bicycle sports shops in Austin and all my buddies work there, but they said it's actually a better for the employees and the mechanics.
Oh, I'm sure
now
the
that Trek owns it, and they take better care of their employees. But the bike shop's not as cool as it was,
That's the trade-off.
That's the cool thing with traveling is like, so there's Fat Tire Farm out west, like outside of San Francisco. Of course, they've been broken into 3 times because they're in San Francisco. But like these legit mountain bike shops all over the country, man, it's mecca. Like there's one outside of Milwaukee I went to, and I hate that I can't remember the name of it, but that dude was super cool. And it's like, Dirt Rentals has got worked on at some of the most legit great mountain bike shops all over the country.
Shit.
And you guys run into that thing too, that, like my wife being from the Jacksonville area is like everything's a roadie shop.
Yep.
And then, so you can't really get a mountain bike mechanic,
we've had that problem. I mean, we had an issue with, there was a guy here that could do some work and he was good and we like him and shout out to him. He's a good guy. But he's never the guy that's going to be like, hey, if you're really going to go do this, maybe we should shift he's not thinking about it in that way. He's thinking about basic mechanic stuff to cover his own ass.
A roadie looks like it's a pedaling bike and it's like this, but you don't think about like, oh, this guy is going to go to Colorado on this bike and bomb down Trestle Bike Park.
Yep.
It's like, so that's all, it's not even their mindset of what this bike's going to go through. So it's not that guy's fault. It's just a generic, like they don't know anything about pivot bearings. Like a lot of times they don't know anything about all that stuff. And it's like, but a good mountain bike shop goes, hey, this stuff's getting worn.
Honestly, a good mountain biker just watches the video and fixes it himself.
I'm not a good mountain biker then.
Yeah, I'm a terrible one.
I would much rather
you guys are the behind the camera guys.
Well,
I'm the one that
but I also like the whole thing too.
The
There's so many great. So I'll tell you a story about this. So I'm in Redding, California, and I find the local mountain bike shop. In Redding, California, like you look through and like up on the mountain, there's like the most epic trails you can ever ride. So I go in there to be like, where should I ride? And he goes, if I were you, I'd ride this, but I wouldn't take that Sprinter van there. I was like, why? Is the roads bad? He's like, nope, meth heads. He's like, that shit'll be stripped by the time you get there. He goes, but if you can ride there, because you literally ride up the mountain for 5 miles and it's a BMX track off the side of a mountain. Like I stopped and took pictures 3 times and still averaged 19 mile an hour down the mountain.
Holy.
And it's like it's berm to berm on like, it looks like it's flat, but you're still like a 6-degree angle.
Yeah.
So it's berm to berm. You can hop from one berm to the other. And so I was like, he's like, drive up there. He goes, and do it for yourself. He's like, but I wouldn't leave that Sprinter up there. And so I go up there, and it just so happens they're doing fireman training for the mountains the day I'm up there. So there's like 4 of those big off-road fire trucks up there. There's 100 people. There's 2 tents. And I go up and I'm like, hey, how long are you guys here today? And they're like, oh, we're going to be here. We're going to be here all day because we're practicing pulling people out of the woods on stretchers and stuff like this. Like, can I park my Sprinter by your fire trucks? Because I really want to ride this mountain. And I've told it's not safe to leave it up here. And they're like, oh, yeah, totally understand. He's like, we find crazy stuff in these woods all the time.
Good God.
And we're in a state park.
Right.
So I park there. He's like, park in between the fire trucks. And I'm like, cool. I was like, I'll leave you the keys if you want, if you got to move it. And they're like, no, it's fine. It's like, you'll be fine there all day. And so just as I'm getting ready to go out on my first lap, I see this old beat up Toyota truck with a dude with no teeth in it with just junk in the back of it just coming through the parking lot. I'm like, there's no reason for that dude to be here.
Nope.
No.
It's like that dude's looking for shit to steal. And then as soon as he sees all the flashing lights, he just down the mountain and out.
Yep.
And I was like, that's the dude that stole all my stuff.
Yep.
But I do that like, I actually ride with my work in progress on me on a separate hard drive. So that like if someone breaks in and steals my stuff, I have insurance for camera and stuff.
I get it.
But you can't replace the work you've already done.
I get it.
So I carry hard drives with me, or like I'll hide hard drives and all that stuff. And it's like, so if someone breaks in, like steal my bikes, steal this, as like all that stuff's got insurance. I was like, but if I'm working on 10 features, I can't go back and redo those 10 features. So.
I send 2 drives home. When we do stuff, we double down. I take one, and then I send it, like usually with the producer, and then one stays with me. So, and just in case, we still don't lose it.
I finally got a full Synology set up at the house, and we have good Wi-Fi at the house. So, like, as long as I have good signal, I can send my RAWs to the Synology from the road. But my files, like, a JPEG's 90 megabytes.
Right.
It's like just start uploading and come back in 2 days, and like, because like some car shows, I'll shoot 2,000 photos.
Golly.
Yeah.
You're running into my world.
Yeah.
My world.
I used to carry just hard drives with me, just full of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And it's
So you have to live it.
All right, tacos.
Okay, now we're
It's
done.
my fault that we haven't had tacos yet. So
Well, I don't know what I'm going to do here. So, hold on.
rock paper scissors.
Oh, wait.
Oh wait.
I have to fix this camera died now too.
Wah, wah.
Wait, no, you could do him.
Oh, what am I doing? Uh-oh.
No, because we always do me, and
You gotta do him. Don't be doing me.
that's
No
part of
doing.
the trick.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. And just remember what John says.
Eat more tacos and support your local bike shop.